information on the Bay Circuit Trail and the environment. I'm Marilyn Bruman, one half of e-awakening.com. My husband Dan and I, we produce environmental videos about people, groups, and organizations that are doing positive things for the environment. Tonight, Dan is going to show some video clips and talk about his experiences hiking the Bay Circuit Trail in connection with the environment. And Al French, who's been involved in the Bay Circuit Trail for over 20 years, is going to talk about his experiences. Dan writes and performs his own original music for all of our videos. And we'd like to start tonight's presentation with a song that he wrote especially for the Bay Circuit Trail. It's called Trail Town.
Thank you, Marilyn. I've been hiking all day out on the trail. I'm pretty tired, but I'm inspired. I've been seeing the sights, earthly delights, it's alright. Now the time comes around, and I found the trail town. People are friendly, they're glad to see me. I think I'll stay right here in this cool breeze, enjoying a tasty freeze on an outdoor patio. No, I won't let this go. I'll stay for a while in this trail town. On the Bay Circuit Trail, there's a trail town. The spell is cast in Georgetown, Mass, a trail town. Yeah, Georgetown, Massachusetts. Sorry about that, that was my best. But, you know, today we're here because the Bay Circuit Trail is our gateway back to nature, right here in our own backyards. I just want to let you know why I hike the Bay Circuit Trail. About 7 years ago, Marilyn and I started our website, e-awakening.com. And 5 years ago, I quit my job as a TV news cameraman in Boston. Marilyn suggested that I go for my dream and hike the New England section of the Appalachian Trail because I had always wanted to, and she'd be my support person. Well, 4 years ago, we produced The Mountain Song, a 1-hour documentary on the hike of the New England section of the Appalachian Trail. In 2013, I was reading an AMC magazine, and it was talking about the Bay Circuit Trail being within reach of millions of people. And it's right here in our own backyard. At that time, I was also reading a book called Blessed Unrest by Paul Hawken. And he was talking about the biggest movement in the world, and no one saw it coming, the environmental movement. So my hike of the Bay Circuit Trail became not only the hike of the Bay Circuit Trail, but also a search for environmental heroes. I hiked 22 separate days, about 10 miles per day for over 7 months, and then Marilyn and I produced 22 separate segments of the Bay Circuit Trail hike. Let's join the adventure crew on the Bay Circuit Trail. Come on along and help me sing this song. We're the adventure crew.
Join the adventure crew for over 200 miles of the Bay Circuit Trail to Massachusetts. One end starts at Plum Island, and the other on the shore of Kingston Bay. The Bay Circuit Trail arcs around Boston, going through 37 communities. Follow the white blazes, up hills, through wetlands, and across eskers.
There's a nice, interesting old trail on the other side of this valley.
It's a network of people saving open space, protecting the land, and preserving its beauty for future generations. And after over a century of work, everything is coming together. It's time to take a hike and enjoy this environmental wonder, the The Bay Circuit Trail is fun, it's educational, and it's now. Check out the Bay Circuit Alliance website, baycircuit.org. And see all the segments of e-awakening.com series featuring the Bay Circuit Trail. 'Cause we're all connected by the trail. Closer to nature, hill and dale. 'Cause we're the adventure crew. That's me and you. And the whole world too.
I can still picture the sights that I saw on the Bay Circuit Trail hike. I remember a red-tailed hawk that was in the tree just above me, and it raised its talon as if in a fist. I remember the deer that was munching on vegetation and shot its head up and stared right into my eyes. But creating the trail wasn't easy. One man who knows the trials and tribulations of creating a hiking trail is Ben Mackay. He's the creator of the Appalachian Trail. His dream of the Bay Circuit Trail was a 2-mile swatch of green all the way surrounding the city of Boston, a wooded path. Ben Mackay was an environmental hero. And there are heroes around us today, alive and well. And they're protecting open space, conserving land, and building trails out into nature. Let's take a side trip to meet one of our contemporary heroes. But first, let's see some of the sights, sounds, and beauty that they're protecting.
A wide trail and open forest greet me for this beautifully cool morning on the Bay Circuit. Amazed to see this creature hovering in front of me like a tiny helicopter, a hoverfly. It's hard to miss this scarlet tanager doing something like a morning dance just above me in the trees. It seems to me it's grooming, its feathers vibrating, a very special moment. Then it's by a dangling leaf to a bog, a swampy area, a concert of birds singing, frogs croaking, nature at its finest. Glorious bright blue skies and the sun. Today is very special because I'm meeting with a man that I've heard so much about.
If it weren't for Alan French, there wouldn't be a Bay Circuit Trail.
I've got to say no to it.
But who is this man walking through the wetlands with a shopping bag in hand? And what got him started on reviving the dream of the Bay Circuit Trail? Simply by going to a meeting at the Appalachian Mountain Club's Boston headquarters.
He had a store. So he was kind of the corporate world. He was representing the corporate world. And they were talking about doing a trek. And he asked them, well, on this trek, do you have any need for an old geezer like me? That's how he put it.
And what was Al's secret for galvanizing the passions of so many people, waiting for a leader to tie it all together, working at the grassroots?
What that really did was it inspired people to get really interested in the Bay Circuit. A lot of people volunteered. And the whole notion that Al came up with, which I think was his genius, was this is a bottoms-up thing. You find people interested in every community, and you let them work out their part. You get them together so the trails meet at the town borders.
State was running it sort of as a zoning question where they tried to get all the towns in the Bay Circuit to do their master planning for buying up land and so forth. The Park Service said, get out there. You'll get the people that will use the land, then they'll vote for it. that's how you drive a program. It wasn't my idea, but I bought it, hook, line, and sinker.
Our next speaker is Al French, who's been involved in the Bay Circuit Trail for over 20 years. He's going to talk to us about some of his experiences and give us a little history on the Bay Circuit Trail.
Thanks. Trying to pin down the Bay Circuit project is really difficult. We're talking about a project that spans 80 years, give or take. And we're talking about somebody who loves to talk. So this is probably what, our third library. We're hoping to get in every library over the next year of the 57 library towns that there are. But I'm practicing trying to be a little briefer than my normal. So I have a little tool, and since my good friend Tom Orth is here with Nell, his wife, I'm going to hand him the device.
I love it.
3 minutes?
That's 3 minutes.
Yes.
So whenever you turn it, when I start, you turn it over, and you go ding every time. I might go more than one, but that'll remind me. Okay.
You want me to go ding every minute?
No,
Every
no.
3 minutes.
Every.
When you turn it over.
Okay.
And we'll try not to have too many dings before everybody falls asleep. So it is hard to pin down. You have to remember that it started out as a vision in 1929 of visionaries like the Charles Elliots, of which there are 3. This is one of the 3 Charles Elliots that involved. They were working in the office of Frederick Law Olmsted, who many people talk about as an inspiration for the Bay Circuit, and he was, his ideas were, but it wasn't until after he passed on that people working in his office in the 29, 30, so forth, started getting specific about the term Bay Circuit. So it was visualized then. It went through a number of iterations in terms of essentially a greenway, at that time a 100-mile corridor surrounding Boston, serving what then was a Boston population. The suburbs at that moment, at the time, didn't exist except as farmland. However, a lot of things happened in this 80-year history. As you all know, we had the recession, came to talk about it, came to interfere. World War II happened, and each time the idea had to kind of disappear and then come back. And through a man named Charles Eliot II, the 3rd Charles Eliot, it basically arrived at a point where some legislation was created. So it was visualized. Back then, it was legislated in 1956 with a bill at the legislature creating a 50-town corridor called the Bay Circuit. And then the state agency that was running it, the Mass DCR now, it was Department of Environmental Management at that time. Like a lot of programs, the first money wasn't appropriated until then, and which was $3.5 million in an open space bond issue. I don't hear a ding. Not yet? Okay, it's still going fine. So it took all this time, really, until 1984, when finally the first money was appropriated, $3.5 million, a portion of the open space bond issue at the state at that time, and for a long, and what that went for until 2 or 3 years later was a couple of key acquisitions, particularly Bay Farm in Duxbury, which is still and is now the southern terminus of the Bay Circuit Trail. It was slated for a development. It was a salt marsh, and it was preserved with at least half that amount of money. There were maybe 2 other acquisitions, one in Framingham. Essentially, the rest of the money went in planning grants to any town of the 50 towns that would apply to include the Bay Circuit concept in their open space planning. 25 of the 50 towns did apply for and receive grants of between $2,000 and $3,000.
Ding.
Thank you. That's one. Okay. All right here. At that point, though, like a lot of state programs, the funding ran out after 2 or 3 years, and all of a sudden the state had no funds for the program, and at that juncture, what you saw on the slide was the proposal of a consulting group from the National Park Service, Rivers and Trails Conservation Assistance Program. They came in, invited in by the state. They were the organization, through their experience nationally, said, if you want to make something work like this, you have to get people out to use the land, and you have to make it a grassroots program. So in 1990, roughly, after it took a couple of years, that meeting at the Appalachian Mountain Club was I think in 1990. In February, in June, we had the first trek, so-called, of about 9 or 10. We said annual treks. We didn't kind of have them every year. That was the beginning of the concept of making a trail. And at that point, we aren't yet to the end of the history, but I just got, because in this program of going around to the libraries, I always tried to say, who can I connect with that over the 25, 30 years, and I would like to, if I can come up with it, drag out of my files a document. And I want to harken you all back to, take yourself back in yesterday land, to June 14th of 1992. The scene is Duxbury, Massachusetts, at the end of Trek 3. And the then chairman of the Bay Circuit Alliance is reading a statement at the close of the trek. And I will just start reading, and you may actually recognize somebody in this room that I'm referring to. I first met her in Andover. We talked. I said Trek 1 was the best 7 days of my life. And I kept asking, are these the best days, Carol Lee? Are these the best days of your life? And then to close the trek, 7 days from Ipswich to Duxbury, I said,
Dang.
one more ding, and then I'm done. Okay. Here's the inscription. I forgot. We must have handed you a plaque. For Carol Lee Miller, who realized her dream of walking from Ipswich Bay to Duxbury on the Bay Circuit Trail. Her never-failing good humor and steady pace will inspire all to follow. And then I said it's my duty to declare the third annual trek ended. And so here we have the living legends of me and Carol Lee and Charlie with his horses, and a wild party on Trek 2000 that I don't have pictures of. Anyway. So to close this out, to me that's the turning point, and nice to be able, where are we today? Yes, here we already showed the first one, right? The
I
before.
can bring up the other one.
Go back to the before. In 1937, here's a map. Can you go backwards?
Yep.
All right.
The other one.
Oh, the other one?
I'm sorry, I should have stopped.
That's okay.
There we go.
That's
This is a 1937 map done by the trustees of reservations. And thing to note is it looks like it's the same, and it's actually interesting that many of the points are the same, but that green circle is 100 miles. Today, when you flip it, we're talking about, it looks like the same, and some of it is the same, but we're now talking about a 200-mile or two corridor. So that's what I want to talk about. What's changed in the program over 80 years? The two big things that changed, at least in my feeling, is from the before to the now, is that roads. People don't realize the impact. Car registrations, and a historian that Larry Anderson does a good job of noting this. The car registration changed from 1937 to let's say 2000 is astronomical. It's like 50 times, much ahead of the growth rate. And Olmsted and Mackay didn't anticipate that. The car back then was a toy. a wonderful thing to be enjoyed instead of to being a threat to open space and pavement and so forth. The second change is in those days, resources, natural resources were considered infinite. And today we all know that they're not. So to me, yes, things can change. We have a recreational trail. It's done a lot of good. Over 4,000 acres of open space adjacent to the trail have been added since 1990. But we still have a job to do in terms of the overall concept of getting people out, recognize the value of open space, and continue to work to handle the problem. So that's my read on the history. And no more dams. So I'm going to turn it back to.
Thank you so much, Al. Thank you, Al. Al French tells me that he's retiring, and I can't imagine that.
I can.
Right now, Al's working with the people of Lawrence to help them access green space and trails. And he's working on numerous other projects. In fact, we wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for Al, because this was his idea, and he made it happen. So I want to thank Al French.
Hundreds of people.
Thank you, Al. So what am I doing on the BayCircuit Trail? Why am I hiking it? Well, all along the trail, I noticed natural beauty, these unbelievable, beautiful places. And so the reason that I want to bring attention to the trail, I want to bring attention to the environment, and I want to help preserve and protect our natural wonders in the earth. Let's take a hike to Georgetown.
The beautiful and rustic Hood Pond leads us to the BayCircuit Trail as a couple takes advantage of this peaceful place. Around an algae-covered pool of water on this dirt road, a small tree seems to grow from the base of a larger one. The beavers are putting part of the trail underwater, so I write down the alternative route. But soon I realize I went the wrong way.
And then I was along this ridge line, and I didn't see any more blazes. And I ended up here at number 86, which is not on the map as a description of where I should be.
And as I backtrack, I notice that the ridge line is an esker. Formed by glaciers, these windy ridges are uniform in shape, looking something like a railway embankment. Now the trail takes us beside a country road.
You could be on Route 128 in heavy traffic, and 10 minutes later you'd be in the woods and not hear a thing.
Carol Lee Miller is the first woman to hike the entire trail, and that was in 1992. Along with her husband Charlie, Carol Lee reminisces about her adventure and also gives us an indication that improvements are being made.
It was difficult to follow back then, and we did have to come out on a lot of roads back then. There weren't as many trails. They made so many trails and got so much permission from many different towns and organizations and private organizations.
Charlie loves to ride and has had many adventures out west. He even has a mule. Together, the Millers have worked to clean up trails in Georgetown.
Pete Carlson from what is now DCR organized a cleanup day. And as I remember, I think there were 13 truckloads of junk, including whole truckloads of tires that had been dumped. And then the state came in and put gates on both ends of it, and that cut a lot of it back.
To help us appreciate a place without the human imprint of trash, a pristine wetland greets the foot traveler. A broken plank requires some delicate footwork. The Georgetown-Raleigh State Forest has some wet areas. The long straight path takes us by a broken blaze onto an abandoned tar road to a bridge over 95. It's an extremely hot, humid day, and while I calculate if I'm carrying enough water, I see a sign saying Boxford is at high risk for eastern equine encephalitis. I'm on roads again, and this is where I make an amazing discovery.
The Arboretum is the last remaining vestige of Kelsey's work in the area. All of the nursery that he ran here, 550 acres, is gone. The airport he had here to bring customers in from distant cities is gone. Basically, it's gone to house lots.
Lauren Wood is the protector of this strikingly beautiful jewel. Open 24/7, the trail goes right through this paradise of trees.
If we don't save it, it'll be gone forever. Just as if we don't save our wilderness areas, what's gone, they're gone forever. So there's got to be room for coexistence between the broad needs of the public and this all-important need that can't be reproduced in the future if we lose it, namely our wilderness, our open spaces, and in the case of the towns around Boston, the rural character of some of these towns.
That was Lauren Wood, and unfortunately I found out that he has passed away. He was a fantastic protector of that Arboretum. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. It's in this area. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And you know, some of you are here because you're interested in hiking the Bay Circuit Trail. You know, it's a great concept to hike. And it is a beautiful place. I mean, it goes through a lot of forests and green spaces, but then it also goes through a lot of roads and things like that. But the real key that I found on my hike was that conserving land and protecting green spaces was the key, is the ultimate. Because these heroes, if they weren't doing this, there'd probably be a lot less. And I just want to show you something that I ran across on my hike that gives you an idea of what happens when you don't protect land.
We enter Sudbury Conservation Land, and then Framingham Conservation Land, and squeeze through an easement between private property. This is where I'm surprised to see construction. A brand new home sprouting up in these woods, and we find others on both sides. And here, what I'm calling a $1 million view. The soil is disturbed, and it's clear we are not welcome to venture off the trail.
That was a pretty good find because there was a little trail off the Bay Circuit Trail that went a few hundred feet, and that's when I saw that place. And I was thinking, boy, that would be great if the trail went over there and you had that view for everybody. And so I did see a lot of beauty. I saw so many beautiful places, sort of forests, woods, fields, went over hills, through valleys, and even over a mountain. There's actually a mountain on the Bay Circuit Trail. I don't know if it's actually a real mountain, but it's called something mountain something. But in some places I felt like I was in the wilderness. And unfortunately I saw so many threats to the trail and to our environment. I'm concerned about the health of our forests. I'm concerned about the ever-expanding encroachment of development. And in Sherburne, they're actually working to preserve green space. So I'd like you to take a hike to Sherburne and see what they're doing there.
We're working with the town to get some general permits to do trail maintenance work.
Chris Tolman is the president of the Sherburne Forest and Trail Association, and he also moved to Sherburne for the open space. He's a civil engineer and is certified in what he calls green engineering development.
It's development, it's growth, but it's, I think they more refer to as smart growth or directed development, where you center where you want the development and you try and preserve the open space, because once the open space is gone, it's pretty much impossible to get back. This is the section of the Bay Circuit Trail within Sherburne.
At Chris's computer, we get a virtual tour of the town, the trails, and all the development around Sherburne.
Compare the downtown framing area and the amount of development and pavement. Compare that to the Sherburne, you can see mostly green. We can zoom in further. You can see there's still a lot of open space. You can see where the houses are and some of the bigger farms. There's a new development just across the town line in Ashland, a big residential subdivision.
And although development is a huge threat to open space and forests, for Chris it's also about connecting neighborhoods and neighbors.
A big piece for me is also connections between neighborhoods. I love being able to get out from my house and get to places and not have to drive. Some days I want to drive and that's great, but there's days I'd like to be able to walk to the center of town and go to Seattle Frosties for an ice cream. And I don't think I should have to drive to get there. So we're building trail connections between neighborhoods that sort of links the neighborhoods and links the open space.
Cutting edge technology.
Can we get from a neighborhood here to a neighborhood here through the open town property?
A progressive view of what our society could be, and a return to the ageless values that seem to be imbued in our human consciousness. How do we find a way to use our resources wisely and for the common good?
If you live in your house and you travel everywhere in your car, you don't really interact with folks. You're in your own little world. If you walk somewhere or bike somewhere or ride a horse somewhere, you end up meeting other people out there, you end up talking to them, which means you know the people in your neighborhood better, you know the people in your community better, through the woods.
All this green, surrounded by all this tar and concrete. As I enter the Rocky Narrows Reservation, with its trails and fields, grasshoppers are flying about. A rugged climb and ledges remind me of the Appalachian Trail. Then on top of King Philip's Overlook, with an elevation of 260 feet, there are views that any wilderness would love to be compared to. Hiking out onto Route 27, I marvel at the primitive beauty of the Charles River. Two kayakers paddle peacefully. Water reflects the sights, sounds, and the feelings of companionship with nature. Old Route 27 harkens to a simpler time. It cracks as the earth slowly regains itself. We are in Medfield now, on a hill, a large round mushroom underfoot. The scene, a rugged timelessness, and a black crow proclaims his right to the earth. And I am welcome back to the world of humans.
Yes, thank you, Marilyn, for picking me up. That, by the way, that Rocky Narrows, that's right around here, isn't it?
No, that's down in the Charles.
Is it, so how far is that from here?
Long ways.
Is it a long ways? Because I would recommend that hike. It is a beautiful place.
I agree with you. I've done
It is spectacular. In Easton, Massachusetts, we met with the Fowlers, and we learned that Easton has saved a lot of land. They've saved a lot of land in their town. And we also learned that education is the key, environmental education.
As the Fowlers enjoy walking the conservation land just behind their backyard, they fill us in on how important environmental education is. Children that learned long ago to love the land have stood to protect it, doing whatever it takes to let nature be nature.
It's bred an ethic in the community of open space protection and appreciation of nature and the connection between the synergy between man and nature. That's really done a lot for expanding the acquisition program.
So back when the Earth was first seen from space, when Rachel Carson introduced the idea of a silent spring, and the first Earth Days were just being celebrated, Easton caught the fever and did something about it.
Now it's 50 years, 60 years later, and you see that in second and third generation. The people that come to the town meeting when issues have to do with protection of open space, that's an inner-bred thing. People remember, oh, I went to sheep pasture summer camp down at Wheaton Farm, and I remember how special it was to me.
We teach about all different forms of environmental awareness and education. Our teachers really specialize in working with the natural world and giving an appreciation of what the natural world gives to us and why it's important to protect it, and also the animals, the resources that are in the natural world.
Jen Cummings is the executive director of the Natural Resources Trust of Easton. She feeds some of the attractions here at Sheep's Pasture. This is just one of NRT's many parcels of land, preserving open space, rustic landscapes, and the educational opportunities that the outdoors has offered countless generations of children.
When we're working with children, we're really working for the future, because if we can interest children in the natural world, it's so important, because in the future we need people to continue to be interested and invested in protecting the natural world and the environment.
Marilyn and I are from the South Shore, and one of the things I noticed during my hike was that the North Shore did a much better job of protecting and conserving their land. Easton is a real, unusual situation on the South Shore. There's very little green space and land left. The BayCircuit Trail is our gateway to nature, but we have to use the gate. Richard Louv wrote a book, Last Child in the Woods. And he says that most of the children in our society have a disorder, NDD, nature deficit disorder. And I quote Richard Louv from Last Child in the Woods. Lacking direct experience with nature, children begin to associate it with fear and apocalypse, not joy and wonder. And I can't imagine that, because when I grew up as a kid, nature was joy and wonder. So it's hard for me to imagine what's going on right now. While I was hiking the trail, I didn't see many families out on the trail. But I did have one example. I was hiking along, and out in the woods, I heard this screaming of joy and laughter. And then all of a sudden, these two little kids come running by me. And their parents are walking, and they're smiling ear to ear because they're seeing their kids, just having such a great time. But that was such an extremely unusual. I mean, almost never saw that. So we have a great trail. We have a gateway back to nature, where children and adults can learn the joy and the wonder of nature. We need to help to get more people back on the trail, so we can learn about the plants, the animals, the trees, and how to keep nature healthy. In our next clip, we're going to see how the Appalachian Trail, the Appalachian Mountain Club, is getting people, is helping to improve the trail.
The BayCircuit Trail takes us through an area of new growth, beech trees on Fox Mountain Trail. And as we come out of the Beaverbrook Woods, there are flags and a memorial to Edward F. Smith. There are several roads to walk down.
Where is the trail? It says to turn left.
Then at Round Table Road, I encounter one of the biggest navigational challenges of my hike. Hard to believe in this small section of woods, I feel like I'm getting lost.
The Blaze told me to go straight ahead. No. It's hard to tell.
On a day of service, Blue Cross Blue Shield employees are trained by the AMC in preparation to improve this section of trail. But there are all kinds of different people and reasons to get involved.
By becoming involved in trail work, people often graduate to that level by saying, I've been hiking these trails for forever and I want to get involved. Or maybe they like building, like doing hard labor, and that's kind of with trail work. You're getting out, you're getting dirty, and you're working hard, but by doing that, you're forging a new relationship and new connections with the place and giving back to the community.
Back to 2013, we leave Old Pond and its corn grinding millstone, and we get a taste of the history Easton has to offer. an old cemetery with leaning stones, to the perfectly picturesque Wheaton Farm, with its expansive pastures, old fences, and wheel-rutted dirt roads. Windswept skies, marshlands, and an old barn. We follow this cart path out to the road and into an area known as the Hockomock Swamp. The access here is along power lines, which is also a wildlife management area. But unfortunately, not everybody plays by the rules. So here I end the day, having a little camera fun and reflecting on what I've learned about the nature of being human.
And while I was watching that, I was just thinking about how when I was on the Appalachian Trail, everything was kind of, it was beautiful. I mean, there's so many sites that's really out in the wilderness, but there's something about hiking a trail like the BayCircuitTrail. It's got so much variety to it. I mean, you never know what you're going to run across. I mean, I'm going under power lines to Hockomock Swamp, and it was one of the most beautiful areas for plants, and I saw a lot of wildlife along there. People are so important to the BayCircuitTrail. I want to point out that Carolee and Charlie are here, and as Al said, and obviously they spent many of their years working on the BayCircuitTrail so that the younger people can have it. And Tom and Nellie Horth are here. Tom was one of the first cartographers to map the trail, and I don't know, is that your map?
The ones you've been showing here.
The ones we've been showing are Tom's map.
Except the one from 1929.
So, I mean, we have so much to be grateful for you guys doing what you've done to help the trail with Al and everyone. But I want to bring Al up one more time because he's going to talk a little bit about how people make a difference. So I'm kind of putting him on the spot because he's, okay, how do people make the differences? Isn't it pretty obvious? But,
Yeah.
I think Al will give us some
Are you ready?
illumination.
Just before I do though, it occurs to me to say, like that Hockomock Swamp was a case where I've done it about 5-6 times in various forms. One of the times when I did it most recently was by myself, and I got there feeling like I was dejected because here's this long stretch, power lines, microwaves coming through, all the various issues. But by the time I got through it, after sitting down a couple of times and looking around, the variety does produce a lot of interest, even though you're not in wilderness. I ended up feeling that stretch of about, 2-3 miles along the power line until we got, because of it, it was also near a swamp with a lot of wildlife. It was peaceful, more or less, except for when the motorcycle went by. But anyway, there is variety, and there's lots of ways to enjoy a trail that never gets more than 20 or 30 miles away from the center of Boston. But in terms of volunteerism, the key is you're going to see when I'm through, and I get through my dings, you're going to see examples, more than you've already heard with Carol Lee and the horse and so forth. So you're going to meet some of the people in the video that have been key volunteers. But if you ask me, if I'm from Georgetown and I didn't know about this, how do I find out more? I do have some advice. Nothing is easy. There's all kinds of information on social media and research on websites, but sometimes you vow you're going to do it, and then you get dismayed by all the variety and how I follow. The key is the Bay Circuit is still a grassroots, even though it's now managed by one of the premier outdoor organizations instead of being totally grassroots before I retired. It still is organized along regional lines. And there are something like 5, 6, 7 regions. Within that region, I think Georgetown is in what we call Region 2, with Middleton, and maybe Ipswich. Anyway, there are 3 or 4 towns that are organized with a volunteer people who are accessible. So what you need to do is just find out that name, and you can go library one way or the other, or if you call the AMC, call Beth Gula, but go to the region, because that's where you will find people that you can then network with. And as I say, there are many more reasons. There's 1 through 7 or 8. I've lost track of the number of the exact organization. But my point is, you can still work regionally, locally. You can always call the AMC, you can do research, but the key, if you want to be active, and I would say, just close by saying, in my 25 years of working on it, I got more out of that project than I put into it. Quite honestly, the 25 years were so meaningful to me in my life. I feel blessed to have been able to do it, working about half-time as a volunteer. It's the people you meet as well as the process. So that's my main key in terms of volunteerism. Work locally.
Yeah. No, it's hard for me to imagine that you got more out of it than you put into it.
I did.
Because, Al has put so much into the BayCircuit Trail that that's unimaginable. And we need more Al Frenches and Tom Horse and the Millers. Okay, so we're at the end of Al's right. If you want to start getting involved in hiking the BayCircuit Trail or getting out into nature and figuring out what it's all about, the AMC is a great way to go because they do have organization where they get you with a group of people. If you don't want to go alone, I know a lot of people don't like it. But if you do like to go alone, just get out there on the trail someplace. Pick a green spot on the map and you go to the Georgetown-Raleigh State Forest and check that out. It's really cool. But this last video clip really doesn't need an explanation, except to say that we really need more environmental heroes. The animals, the earth, nature needs more environmental heroes. We need to tell more stories about environmental heroes because I believe, and Marilyn believes, and I believe Al would probably agree with this, the more we show environmental heroes on our stories, the more people will be inspired to become environmental heroes.
We talked to a lot of people along the trail, so I get to meet a lot of people, hear a lot of stories, find out a lot about what people are doing. And for me, this one is particularly important because I'm a big proponent of knowing what we have in our own backyards.
And what a backyard it is. 37 communities of trails, woods, forests, rivers, and streams. Bogs, wetlands, ponds, and all the insects, the birds, and the animals. And within this journey, we have uncovered a true and noble side of human nature, people at their best.
We discovered that we have some gems and some treasures and a lot of people that are out there protecting what we have and procuring more of the open space that is still available and saving it so that we have it for future generations.
We have mined our backyards for heroes, not from the past, but alive and living now, doing the unsung work that will only be noticed more and more as the years peel by. The BayCircuit Trail could have perished. Our little backyard could have endless chains of development. But they courageously fought on, and that is why we have this treasure.
It's a real gem. We have something really incredible, and it crosses 200 miles of our own state. And a lot of people, I know I'm repeating myself, but a lot of people have gone to a lot of work, spending some of them a good chunk of their lives working on this.
We produced this video to find environmental heroes, people taking action to care for the earth. The bay is nearly silent, as a cold, damp chill is accompanied by drops of rain. Deep red and a lifeless color infiltrates the green mist. There were fields of flowers then, and a birdhouse waiting for a tenant. A hawk searched in the sky for something to eat. It was a beautiful sight. Finally, we walked the last few feet of an amazing achievement, a 200-mile trail kept alive by sheer guts and determination. Together, our glass is full. There is always hope. This has been a tale about the keepers of the flame, those who chose to do battle with apathy and neglect. We hope that this is a tale of a great awakening. This is a tale of a 200-mile trail, and all of the heroes called to the cause were taking a walk. We're living the talk, paying respect to the swamps and bogs. The BayCircuitTrail, the BayCircuitTrail.
We've shared some clips with you from the BayCircuitTrail segments, and on our website you can see the episodes in their entirety. Our website is e-awakening.com, and on each of the days it will list what towns. So if you're looking to maybe see something that might be on the social, you can tell what towns are going to be featured in each one of the days. And right now we'd like to close this portion of the presentation with one of my favorite songs, and to me it puts into music what that last video showed us, and the song is One.
It's not so much about who you are, it's more about who you become. In the face of the storm, we find some peace, like the eye in the middle. We become one. We find our trail, a quiet path, reflects the magnitude. We cannot fail. Let's do the math. In the many there is solitude. The Nunkatesson Greenway and the BayCircuitTrail. When we come together, we cannot fail. The Appalachian Mountain Club and the BayCircuitTrail. When we come together, we cannot fail. Our good friend Alan French and the BayCircuitTrail. We cannot fail. All the environmentalists and the BayCircuitTrail. When we come together, we cannot fail. We cannot fail when we come together as one.